Good morning. This is Haney Bushra. I'm an immigration attorney in Huntington Beach, California. Today is June 27, 2020, and I wanted to do a short video about the changes in the work permit regulations regarding people who are seeking asylum or have filed asylum. So yesterday, June 26, 2020, a new rule was regarding work permits for pending asylum cases was issued in something called the Federal Register. The Federal Register is where government basically puts in all the rules that they are gonna be publishing or giving or gonna be using after a certain amount of period. It's like giving a notice to everybody saying, hey, we have a rule that's coming up, and that's how we're gonna be applied. Up until then, until we got it published yesterday, we only had drafts of the rule, and the rule that was published yesterday is much worse than we thought before. Okay, to summarize the rule affects those who are applying for a work permit. As of now, the law is that you apply for a work permit after 150 days from the filing of your asylum application. Your work permit should take about 30 days, usually, that's now, to be processed and issued after 180 days from the filing of your asylum application. So it's 150 days in the beginning, and then you add 30 days for it to be processed and to be done, and then you get it after 180 days, which is 6 months. This new rule seeks to change how much time has to pass for you to apply for a work permit and who will be able to get it. The rule was published in something called the Federal Register, like I said, on June 26, 2020, and it will take effect on August 25th, 2020, unless stopped by a lawsuit. There was a draft that was shown about a week ago about the rule, but the final rule was issued yesterday, and that's the one we are dealing with right now, and that's the one I want to analyze for you right now. When the rule was issued, I read it to say that if you file an asylum application before August 25th, 2020, the 365 days waiting period to apply for a work permit will not apply to you. So if you had an asylum application filed, that's my thought was that before August 25th, 2020, this new rule is not going to apply for you. But the publication of the rule has made it clear that this is incorrect. The rule says that the 365 days waiting period will not apply for those with pending work permit applications, not asylum applications. So it talks about pending work permit applications, not the fact that you have a pending an asylum application. A pending work permit application is one that is filed 150 days from the filing of your asylum claim. So that means that if you have not received a receipt from USCIS showing that your asylum application was filed on or before March 27, 2020, and you filed for a work permit application postmarked on August 24th, 2020, you will have to wait for 365 days to obtain your work permit. Now, I apologize for the mix-up, and I know that I said before that what counted is when you apply for your asylum, but apparently it's what counts is when you apply for your work permit, okay? Now, the rule, even though the rule talks about dependency of the work permit application, the I-765 applications, when it talks about the 365 days, it talks about dependency of the asylum application when it talks about two other provisions in there. So the first of these two other provisions are that if you have been in the U.S. for more than 1 year, whether legally or not, and your asylum application was filed on August 25th, 2020 or later, you would not get a work permit until your case is decided by an asylum officer or an immigration judge. And decided here means that you are approved, because if the asylum officer says you are not approved, I'm going to refer you to the immigration court, then your case has not been approved yet, and that way you don't get a work permit. So even if you go to the asylum office and you're referred to the immigration judge, you will not get a work permit if you have filed your asylum application more than 1 year from entry to the U.S. And we're talking about anybody who's been here for more than 1 year, whether in a legal status or outside of a legal status. So whether you were here and you had some status like an H-1B, had some status like a student visa or something like that, if you file for an asylum application after August 25th, 2020, you will not get a work permit at all while your asylum is pending. The second provision, where the date of the filing of the asylum application matters, deals with the effect of criminal convictions in the U.S. and overseas on getting a work permit. The new rule states that certain crimes one is convicted of in the U.S. or overseas will cause you not to get a work permit. This is, of course, a problem because sometimes your asylum claim is based on being unfairly convicted overseas. But the rule published yesterday made it clear that the crime on which the basis of the criminal conviction was based had to have occurred on or after August 25th, 2020. So for this part, what is important is when did the crime occur? If the crime occurred and you were convicted later of it, so it's not only a crime, but it's a crime and a conviction. So if the crime occurred after August 25th, 2020, then you don't have a problem with that. The rule also clarifies that if you entered the U.S. illegally and did not seek asylum within 48 hours, you will never get a work permit while your asylum case is pending. So if you wait 3 days to file your asylum application and you have not done it within 48 hours, you will never be able to get a work permit while your asylum case is still in the courts. The rule also clarifies that if you have an appeal with the federal court after losing your asylum claim in the asylum office, in the immigration court, and the Board of Immigration Appeals, you will not get a work permit. So if you have gone through an asylum case with the asylum office, the immigration court, and the Board of Immigration, which is the 3 steps that you can take in the administrative branch, and then try to appeal it, okay, with the federal courts, okay, but while your appeal is pending with the federal courts, the circuit courts, you're not going to be able to get a work permit. The rule also lets USCIS take its time to issue work permits. The current law says that USCIS, which is immigration, must issue it within 30 days. But the new rule puts no limit on how long USCIS could take to process this application. This means that after waiting for a year to apply for a work permit, it can take a limitless amount of time to be processed and issued that work permit. Now, in one of the most cruel aspects of that rule, that I think it's small, but just shows you the cruelty of the rule. It also eliminates something called recommended approvals. Recommended approvals were for people who had their asylum case heard before an immigration officer or an asylum officer, and the asylum officer says, you know what, I'm convinced that you deserve asylum, but I haven't done my background checks because there's a backlog in the background checks. So I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna issue something called recommended approval for you. It's an approval that says I can see that you are deserving of asylum, but it's not a final approval until I get your background checks. Okay, and so they eliminated that too. Okay, which just shows me how cruel they are. They don't want to give people any peace of mind at all during the process of their asylum application. Finally, the work permit allows you, the new work permit rule allows you to apply for a renewal of your work permit 6 months before its expiration. Now, as you can see, this rule is very cruel and it will be challenged in courts because it effectively makes it impossible for people to apply for asylum and support themselves, as cases can take years to be processed. Some previous challenges of such rules were successful, especially when they attempt to change the rules on asylum applications that have already been filed. So my advice is to file your asylum application as soon as possible, before the beginning of this rule, so that if there is a lawsuit against this rule, you would be protected under such lawsuit. My advice for people who have been here for more than a year, whether in status like a student status or H-1B status, and were thinking about doing asylum, that they file their applications immediately. Because if you file your application after August 25th, 2020, you are not going to get a work permit if you had been already in the United States for more than 1 year, whether in a legal status or without a legal status. Now, I understand this is very bad news, and my hope that things in November of this year will change with the elections, and things will get better after that. But this is the reality that we're dealing with right now. If you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to contact us, and hopefully we'll be able to respond to your questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.